a glass of wine.
Okay, when you come back, we'll start. I think most people who can get in are trying or have gotten in or they'll figure it out. We'll
So
start.
where are you, Olson?
I'm in Catarina in the casita here. It's a lovely spring day, as I'm sure it is in Houston.
It
And
is.
Deb is in the Istana, which is the writer's cabin about a quarter-mile away. And she's back. So why don't we get started? We're delighted to have Deb Olin Unferth with us this year. This is our second resident this spring. Just briefly, our first resident, Charlotte Gullick, was curtailed due to the big freeze. And we canceled the reading because people were still thawing out after that. So we're delighted to have Deb here. She's the recipient. I'm not going to read her bio, as you could read it down lower, but she is a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship and 3 Pushcart prizes. So without any further ado, Deb, can I turn it over to you?
Sure. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for coming on this beautiful spring day. I have had a fantastic 2 weeks here. I've seen a javelina. I've seen a giant cow steer thing. I've heard so many coyotes and walked through so many miles of desert every day. It's just been astonishing. I've watched the sunrise every morning on this side and the sunset every evening on this side. I mean, this place is just, it's fantastic. And I'm so grateful to be here. I've had just a wonderful time. So I am going to do a very short reading. This story takes me about like 15 minutes or so to read, just because I think it's really hard to listen on Zoom. So this story is a little bit older. It's like easy to follow, so because my last book that came out was Barn 8, which is a novel. Novels are hard to read from. They're hard to listen to. Even if you're all in a room together, I think it's really hard on Zoom. And then maybe after I read it's about 15 minutes or so, maybe we can just talk a little, I guess. And that's it. So thanks for coming, Mom and Dad. It's always great to have my parents. They're in California. Or no, right now they're in Arizona. All right, here we go. This story is called Pet. Somehow they have wound up with these 2 turtles. The woman says she saved them. Her son says all she did is move them from one place to another, from the basement of her sister's house to their apartment, also a basement, and the turtles' lives are no better than they were before. And her own life is significantly worse, since now she has to take care of them. Well, the woman and her son will take care of them together. Not him. He's not the one who took them. He doesn't even know why she did it. Making off with somebody's pets? That's weird. Those turtles would have died down there in the dark, like all the other pets in her sister's life. It was a philanthropic moment taking them. It's called philanthropy. Does he even know what that is? The mother wonders. Besides, the turtles aren't much work. She has to feed them and check their water temperature and turn the light on and off. She has to clean their tank each week. She has to take the tank's water out cup by cup, pour it into a bowl, then carry the bowl to the tub, walk through 2 rooms to do it with drops of dirty water falling on the floor. She has to empty bowl after bowl. She doesn't know how many bowls fill a tank, many, and many cups to fill a bowl. Another way to do it is by siphon. She could put the siphon in her mouth, suck, and when she sees the water coming up, pour it into the bowl. Are you kidding me? Putting that turtle shit in your mouth, says her son. Since when does he use words like that and at his mother too? Can I use words like salmonella, says her son? Can I use words like incredibly stupid? Another question. When was the last time someone actually touched this woman, not counting the turtles? A long time. She wound up with the turtles in the first place because every time she looked in the basement that week, she saw the turtles. One of her house sitting jobs was for her sister was to feed them. Really, the situation was so pathetic. You'd go down to the darkest, coldest basement, make your way toward a corner that had a little light, and there would be two turtles, one sitting on top of the other, and they only had one rock, and it was bad. You'd toss in a few food sticks and think, okay, well, this is why we will all go to hell. Or think, well, God did put us in charge of the things, right? Or think, what was God thinking? Or think, what were the owners of this house, her own sister and that god-awful husband of hers thinking? Who are these people that they could leave these little animals down here with their long frowns? So she called her sister in Florida and said, there are two turtles in the basement, and I have to say they don't look very pleased. Do you know how long turtles live? Said the sister. Do you know what it's like to have kids who one day come home with one turtle and then another day come home with another? And you get to be either the mom who will let them have turtles or the mom who won't. And then guess who's stuck taking care of them for the next 100 years? By all means, said the sister, I'm sure you do a better job. Take them, take everything, tank, food, thermometer, rock, get them out of my house. Now one of the turtles is sick or something is wrong with it. It just lies on the bottom of the tank, not moving. See that? How it's lying there? It could drown. Don't look at him, says her son. He's just leaving, just out the door. Was she looking at him? Would he like to report where her eyes were resting at the moment of the observation? Was it on the tank or on him? And don't forget how much he always said he wanted a pet. He wanted a pet when he was 8. The turtle could drown. Well, she's responsible for it, he says. It was her philanthropic moment that led her into this, and he's not going to be the one to lead her out. If he were her, he would first toss the turtle out into the courtyard and vow never to have another philanthropic moment again. Then he would go out to the courtyard and find the turtle and bring it to the vet. So she does all that, and she waits her turn, and then the vet says he has no idea. He's a vet for mammals, he says. He puts the turtle on a scale and says, its weight is fine, and the nurses and the other people around there laugh. He pulls on its little legs and measures it and says, well, it's long enough, and the nurses laugh again. It's all a big waste of her time and embarrassing, and it costs $40. Then she has to carry the turtle in a tool case all day because she's worried it might die in the tank while she's gone. She takes the turtle to work and puts it under her desk by her feet, and then she takes it to her AA meeting. She opens the case a little because she's worried it might suffocate inside. What is that thing? Someone at the AA meeting says. That is really ugly. She looks down at it. True, it's not the nicest looking animal, but how many creatures of this earth can honestly say that they are, including this person before her? People gather around. What's wrong with it, they say. It's covered in mud, they say. The shell just looks like that, she says. It just looks that way. You can't have that in here, they say. It's just a turtle, a new man says. The other people in the AA meeting look at him. It may have disease, they say. Get that thing out of here. She takes the case and leaves. She sits at the kitchen table with her head in her arms. Her son comes in and says she could leave the turtle out in the street. Maybe a car would come along and hit it. The turtle doesn't get better. She calls the pet store, calls her sister, calls other people she knows who have pets or who are generally responsible people. No one has any idea. No one knows until finally someone says, oh, I know. It needs those vitamin flakes and a special light so it can absorb nutrients. So she goes out and she buys the special light and the vitamin flakes, and they're expensive and the store is far. And she sees she has a ticket on her car when she comes out. But lo and behold, the turtle is better in a few days, or at least swimming around like before. No thanks to her son, who couldn't help her with one little thing. No thanks to her son, who couldn't manage to get home at a decent hour. Here it is nearly midnight. Where is he? She goes up in her robe to the entryway to see if he is lying dead in the street. The security door is propped open with a brick so anyone could come in and kill them. She stands looking out into the dark to see if her son is being held up on the corner or being stabbed or shot. A man comes in who isn't her son. Are you the one who propped this door open, she says, so anyone can come in here? I'm a single woman living alone with my son, she says. The man shrugs. So get a husband, he says. Her son appears at 2 a.m. Have you been drinking, she says, following him down the hall. Just tell me that. A tall glass of shut the fuck up, he says, and goes into his room. She can't do this, just can't. She's not equipped to deal with small animals, teenagers, basement apartments. She calls her sister. Do you think your kids want their turtles back? Oh, no, you don't, says her sister. I don't care what you do with those turtles, but don't bring them here. I'm the good guy for once. Their aunt stole them. It wasn't anything I did. I saved them, says the woman. I think you were looking in the wrong basement. She hadn't been the best mom. She knows that. There were a few rough years. He used to want to be with her all the time. Now he avoids her. Do you want to go shopping on Saturday, she says? Do I want to sit in traffic for hours with only you to talk to? Not likely. Go to the movies then? Dinner? Look, Mom, you're not my date, okay? And we're not friends. You're the parent. I'm the kid who suffers in your presence until I can get away. She never left him chained to a radiator or locked in a closet. She did leave him with friends a couple of times, once when he had the chicken pox, once when she went into detox, twice, once on Halloween. With no costume, says her son. But it worked out all right, didn't it? You like Ron and Cece. Ron and Cece are very nice people. At least they weren't drunk, if that's what you mean. They liked you. They took you trick-or-treating. You got a pumpkin full of candy. They felt sorry for me. My mother was a drunk. They bought you a costume of a superhero nobody ever heard of. And another thing, he says, you didn't leave me with them. I called them. They came and picked me up. But now that the turtle is better, it keeps fighting with the other turtle, the smaller one, hurting it, snapping at it, its friend, the only one it may ever have, and some have less than that, and still the turtle keeps biting. And it is really sad because the smaller one wants to be near the bigger one all the time, can't rest unless it is next to the bigger one who keeps biting it each time it gets close. So she calls all the same people again, and they say they have no idea again, and she thinks this is going to go on eternally. She'll always have a question no one can answer and a long list of people to ask. So she goes to an AA meeting and talks about it, and they too look bored, wishing she'd go away. Finally, the new man says, sounds like you need a second tank or one less turtle. Why don't you take one to the pet store? It has been so long since anyone gave her advice that she wanted to hear. She is tearful with gratitude. We can't take that, the clerk at the pet store says. Oh, please, she says, I'll pay you. Sorry. Why don't you take it to the reptile swap? What's that? It turns out there's a place you go to bring your reptile if you don't want it anymore and are willing to take another one home. Maybe she could get a frog or a fish, a pet that lives less long. It's very far and it's illegal. So she takes the turtle in a hat box, drives out on the toll road on a Saturday. The reptile swap is held in a muddy field, which she hadn't understood would be the case. She is wearing high heels. Her shoes sink when she steps, and she can feel water seeping through the soles. She wants a drink. It's hard to walk, and she wobbles with her hat box. People look at her strangely. She carries the hat box from table to table. Nobody wants her turtles. They have chirping dragons, 6-foot snakes. There's a single tiny monkey gripping the bars of its cage like a convict. No one looks at her turtle. She brings it back home. Monday, she finds a note on her desk. Were you going to send out the minutes before leaving for the weekend? Never mind, I did it. P.S. I'm writing this at 9:15. Did I forget you were coming in late today? She wonders, why do other people have pets? Is it for the same bad reason as she? What is her bad reason? She doesn't even know. They aren't even cute, these turtles. This one especially, it looks like an oven mitt. She feels nothing for these turtles. She hates them. They are ugly. They smell bad. Now she has 2 tanks and she has to clean 2 of them, and it is awful. She hates it so much that she waits and waits until the water is cloudy and polluted and stinks. Finally, she begins dumping out the water, carrying both tanks worth of water across 2 rooms to the bathroom and pouring it into the tub. But there is so much shit in it, it clogs. A puddle of brown water in the tub. Oh God, what is she gonna do now? There's shit in the tub. You put it in the tub, her son calls from his room. Shit goes in the toilet, Mom. Oh God, why is this happening? Why does everything she does turn out this way? There is no way out of this. This is hell. And you know what? She is supposed to have a date tonight. The only one in what, a year? 2 years? What? Her son comes out of his room to say. What did you just say? Yes, she has a date with a man from a meeting. One of those drug addicts, those drunks? Yes, well, after she was forced to leave with the turtle and the tool case and was crying in the parking lot, holding the turtle case in one hand and her purse in the other, the new man came out and said, let's see what you've got there. And she showed him. And at the next meeting, he said something nice about her remarks. And at the next meeting, he sat next to her and asked if he could bring her a cup of coffee when he went to get his own cup. And after that, he asked after the turtles and after her son. And at the next meeting, he asked if she wanted to go to dinner. And you said yes, said her son. And she said yes. So basically, she has a date and she is trying to hurry it up with these tanks, and dirty water keeps splashing onto the floor. And now the tub is clogged. And yes, the man is a little old for her and not as good looking as her son's father, and is maybe not going to win any awards for being dashing and rich. But anyway, it is more or less a date. When were you going to tell me, says her son. What the fuck is going on? How old is this guy who's a little old for her? 80? So she goes and buys some drain cleaner, the really powerful stuff, and she pours it in and waits. You didn't mention any man, says her son. Didn't say a word. Well, she does have other concerns on her mind just now. And the drain explodes. Turtle feces all over the tub and the wall and the curtain and the window, because that is the kind of place she lives in with her only son, a basement apartment with cheap drains in a bad neighborhood because her husband divorced her and left, even though she stopped drinking. And he never calls her son, his son, not even on his birthday, never sends enough money. And there's turtle shit on the wall and she has to be up early. And meanwhile, years are going by, her son growing up and she fading further from his mind. There's turtle shit everywhere, her son is saying, and you're bringing home drunks. This place has got to be unfit. Who do I call to report you? I should go live with Dad. Go ahead, she says, if you can get him on the phone. How has she come to this? How? She can put a heroic spin on it or a negative one. She could make herself look enlightened or close to tramphood. She has never seen a woman make worse choices than she. She has never known any person so transparently wrong-headed, so obviously in need of job counseling, parenting classes, therapy, help of any kind, any lifeboat, any raft, so obviously in need of a hard, careful look at herself, and so obviously not going to do it. She is that unaware, that full of the opposite of insight, that doomed to middling livelihood at best, certain solitude, early illness, weakness, not quite poverty, strained relations with her son, relatives who don't really like her taking care of her when she's old, the indignity of all this. How exhausting this life, this topic, how senseless, how difficult. She has her face in her hands. And what is that now? Turtle shit in her hair? Well, this is a lovely way to spend the afternoon. Does she feel better now, Miss Pity Party? The phone rings. That would be her date. Don't answer that, her son says. She reaches for the phone. Don't you dare, her son says. You're going out with that drug addict and leave me here in this shit? All right, she says. She picks up the phone. I can't go, she says to the man on the phone. I'm sorry, I can't go out. Come on, says the man on the phone. You need a night out. She tells him about the turtle shit. She is standing in the bathroom doorway looking at it. I'm coming over, says the man on the phone. No, her son says. He is behind her. Tell that guy you better not show up. I'll help you clean it up, says the man on the phone. What, she says? Sure, I don't mind. Do you know what we're talking about here? She says. Have you been drinking? He's been drinking, says her son. Tell him not to come. I'm on my way. I'm in the car, he says. I've got all the supplies in the back. Don't come. My son's in hysterics. What? Her son screams. We'll drive them to the turtle pond, says the man on the phone. What turtle pond? She says. What turtle pond? Her son says. There's a turtle pond, hundreds of turtles. They line up on the logs like dots. Turtles that used to have owners like you, owners who visit each spring. They bring binoculars. They ride out on the pond in canoes. I don't have any canoe. We hate canoes, her son says. We'll go in the spring. The turtles will walk through the grass. They'll dive bravely into the water. They'll be the ones who get to set me free, she says. The end.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to
Wonderful.
anybody who has any questions or comments or anything that like to speak with Deb about.
Oh, this really hits the spot, because when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I remember dictating to my mother a long story, well, long for a 5-year-old, about turtles. I was very fond of turtles at that age. So I'm a fellow writer of turtle stories. Although my turtles were talking turtles, I think, and they had adventures and made things like longboats. But anyway.
So Dan, what inspired you to use turtles?
Well, I mean, I had an aunt who had these turtles that were in the basement, and I was house sitting and I stole them. And I had a sort of a kind of a similar sort of situation where then I had these awful 2 turtles. And so I started just kind of writing it up like that. But it was kind of boring, it was just like, me and, like living alone as a graduate student or whatever with these turtles. And so I started kind of adding other elements to it to just make the story a little more complicated and to bring, more. So I, like suddenly she's an alcoholic, and then she's got this son, and, who's, it's hard to reach teenagers. And so I just kind of started bringing in more elements to bring in more elements of tension.
Oh, great.
So
Question. Do we raise our hands? So I actually, last spring, I taught a flash fiction course, and we read Wait Till You See Me Dance. And we read probably about 15 of the really short pieces in that. And one of the things I remember that came up a lot is the students talked a lot about how in so many of your stories, there's a kind of unnamed protagonist, right? It's or like, it's the mother, or it's just a she, or it's just, and how that's, it's one of the kind of unifying factors of that book. And I was just kind of curious about how that developed, because it seemed like something that you do a lot in the stories. It's really effective because the stories feel very intimate, but you never know the names of the characters, right? Or in a lot of them, you often don't get names. And so I wondered, like, is that something that evolved over time, or is that something you're just experimenting with? And just curious.
I feel sometimes like I came at writing backwards, because one of my favorite very early writers was Gertrude Stein. And I just thought she was so badass and rebellious. And I just loved that streak in her. And, you know, she doesn't use names a lot of times she doesn't use names, or she doesn't use commas, and she doesn't use quotation marks, and she repeats herself all the time. And so that was kind of how I started writing, or that was the kind of, I was never interested. I always felt like using punctuation marks and names and things like that were kind of doing too much work for the reader. And so like my early books, my first two books have no quotation marks in them. And like what happened, and with names, the reason I think I felt like it was doing too much work is that if you have a name, a lot of people have sort of associations, you know, like if you have a name like Bertha, like that is going to have associations, or even Alex, you know, that just have that. And then it's like you can have, it's so much harder to have to really describe someone who would look like or be someone named, who would be named Bertha. And so if I have to rely on, you know, my own powers of conveyance of character to create this Bertha character, it's harder. And so my first two books, I don't really have any names. I don't really, you know, I don't use quotation marks and things like that. And then it was like very slowly over a period of years, I began integrating things like I remember the first time I used quotation marks, I felt so rebellious and crazy because I hadn't used them in so long. And then I was like, what would it be like to just put in a quotation mark? And I stuck them in, and I was like, whoa, it's so powerful. Like you could, you know, it separates out this block of text, and, you know, someone's talking. And so then after that, I just started using them. And I still struggle with names like Barn 8, which was my last novel. Oh, most of the characters are named, but I still have a couple characters in there that don't have names. But I'm interested in names. I'm really, really interested in them and their role. And I think when I wrote that book of stories that you're talking about, that was my book before this. It was 2 books ago. I was still kind of on the borderline about what I felt about names, so I didn't. Plus, you know, you get like a more sort of universal feel too if you don't use names. Like the first story in that collection, Likeable, is just like a woman, she feels really unlikable, and like anyone could be that woman, you know. But if you have like, you know, Deb or Bertha, suddenly it's like Bertha is unlikable, as opposed to just like any she that there is getting older and like feels how unlikable she is to other people.
It's really interesting. Right before we had read one of Lydia Davis's books, Can and Won't, and she does it's a similar thing that you see in a lot of those pieces too. And I remember that, but it's really, the Gertrude Stein connection makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
I love Lydia Davis. I asked Lydia Davis once if she liked Gertrude Stein, and she said no. Because I felt like Lydia and I had so much in common. Like there's no way that she doesn't love everything that I love, but she's totally, we have very different influences. And, you know, like I sat down with like a list of books that I knew she must adore, and she didn't like any of them. So, oh well.
Well, you know, they say in Texas, if 2 people always agree, one of them ain't necessary.
Oh my God, that's so good.
That's the secret of my 40 years of marriage.
Oh my God, Igor, that is so terrific.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
one thing you might tell us about, if you know, one of the things you're interested in and you do is a sort of an outreach to one of the prisons in South Texas. And could you just tell us a little bit about that? Is it you're doing some writing coaching, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I run a prison program at a prison in South Texas. Actually, it's not that far from here. It's in Kennedy. And actually a lot of the parents of the incarcerated people live in San Antonio. A lot of my students, their parents live in San Antonio. In fact, on my way home, I might stop and see one of them. So anyway, yes, so I run, it's like a very small creative writing program it's a maximum security prison for men. And we have a workshop and it's great. And then we have our own library, and the students read books from the library, and then they're matched to different people around the country who read the same books as them, and they write letters back and forth. So it's like a pen pal kind of thing. That's, we call them literary correspondence. So they write about the books they're reading. It's terrific. And then we have like a really small art program too, like prison comics and illustrations. It's really cool. And yeah, it's been amazing. It has not been on complete hiatus through COVID, but I haven't been able to go. So we've just been mailing materials back and forth. Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, like 5 or 6 years now. And my dad is our treasurer, in fact.
It's
Right,
interesting.
Dad?
Has that influenced
You're
your,
our treasurer.
sorry. No, I'm just wondering if that's
Has it influenced my writing?
your writing any. I mean, I'm thinking of a couple of characters in Barn 8, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so Barn 8 was my last novel, and it's about these USDA inspectors who kind of go rogue and decide that they're going to empty an entire farm's worth of chickens. So it's like 1 million chickens off of one farm. And I did sort of develop the whole concept while driving back and forth to Connolly, which is the name of the prison. And I think that I don't really like things being in cages, and the way that these men have to live in the prison. They're living in cages. They talk a lot about what it's like to live in cages. And all of these animals living, like, I just think it's a very strange thing that we have developed as humans in modern society. Like this is the great thing that we have brought, and this is the great thing that industrialism has brought to the world, is putting huge numbers of living beings in cages. It's so weird to me and so sick. And they're humans, and they're birds that fly, like they're, all different kinds of animals. Like, this is our great legacy of industrialism, is completely destroying the planet and putting billions of living beings into prisons and cages. And so I was kind of inspired by all of that to kind of come up with the whole concept of Barn 8, and wanting to kind of talk about that. And I think that, I haven't written about the incarcerated people who I work with, because I mean, the guys who I work with have just lost so much. They have these really long sentences, like 50 years, and they've just lost everything. And they feel like the only thing they still have is their own voice and their own stories. And so I don't want to take their stories. I want to help them write their stories and publish them. I don't want to steal them for myself. And they're sensitive to that. They don't want anyone to steal their stories. So I don't write their stories, but I'm inspired by, like how I see them, and how they help me review the world that I live in.
I have a question. Can I'm just curious how to know how your writer in residence experience will influence your future writing, like what you're doing right now. I don't know how long you've been there now and how much longer you'll be there, but how do you see that this will influence you going forward?
You know, it's been so wonderful. I've been to a couple other residencies. I've been to like Yaddo and McDowell, but when I'm at those, there's a lot of people there. And it's not really about like the grounds. It's not really about like the landscape. It's just sort of about this house that you're in, and there's all these interesting people, and you're just like working all the time, and you all have dinner together. You know, this has been a very different experience. And in many ways, like just more inspiring. I mean, not that I loved those too, but this has been different and inspiring in a really different way. Like, you know, it's just the landscape is so beautiful, and it's just so inspiring, and the life that I'm seeing, that just like the free life, the birds and the coyotes that I hear at night, and that weird little javelina that I saw, and all of the just twisted the plants are all like twisted weird, and you know, there's just, and now it's spring, so everything's just kind of like coming alive. Like I've been here for 2 weeks, and it's just in the last 2 weeks I have seen the trees that I've been staring at every day, and they are changing, and it's exciting, and it's so quiet. And at night I can see like the Milky Way and just so many stars. And no, it's absolutely inspiring. You know, the book that I'm working on now, it's a novel that is like, it takes place partly on Mars, and it's partly takes place in the desert, where there's like one of these like DNA arcs of extinct animals has been hidden, and these people have come from Mars to try to find it. That's kind of like what the story's about. And so there are these people who are living in this you know, desert of the future. And so I've just been sort of walking through the desert and just like taking notes and observing and thinking about like, what would it be like to just live here all the time and to be totally alone? That's the other thing, is like, it's so cool to be completely alone. Like that's really, it opens up your brain in a way that it's very hard to do when you're just like in class all the time and surrounded by people, and you know, you're in your own surroundings and you've got friends coming over. Like it's a very different experience. So no, it's been fantastic, and it will definitely inspire this next book for sure. You will find some familiar things in there.
That's good to hear. That's nice.
Well,
Highly recommended for writers.
unless anybody else has any other comments or ideas for Deb, you know, maybe we should end this. Thank you very much, Deb, for being here, and I thought your reading was fantastic. I was really wondering how you're going to end that. You ended it really well, and you know, the story. So you know, I enjoyed it a lot. So we look forward to when your book comes out to reading that. So Deb's the second resident this year. We'll have one more in April for the spring. Kimberly Garza will be here for April, and then in the fall we'll have Ben Fountain, who wrote Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Will be here in October.
I love him. He's so sweet.
Looking forward to having him here. And then in the fall, in November, the poet Eric Smith will be here he's from Tennessee, from Swanee, I believe. So, and then we have a couple more that we've got for 2022, who I won't name at the moment, so I don't want to jinx it. So thank you very much, Deb, for doing this reading. Thanks to all of you for coming this evening. I know you have lots of things to do, and it's a beautiful day out here, so it's probably time to go outside and enjoy that. So thanks again, and hope to
Thank you.
next time.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Next time.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. We enjoyed it.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Deb.
So nice to meet you, Andrew and Michael, Igor, everyone.
Good night.
Yes, good luck.
Thank
Good
you.
work.